Good evening. I'm Bill Maley, Brighton Town Supervisor, and I'm pleased to welcome you to our May 3rd. The weather feels more like April or March, but May 13th meeting of the Brighton Town Board. This is our fourth Zoom remote town board meeting. This meeting, like the others, is being held in compliance with Governor Cuomo's executive order, modifying some of the provisions of the state open meetings law to enable local government bodies to continue to meet and to continue to do so in a way that will be open and accessible to the public. We are continuing to do that and really go above and beyond what the open meetings law requires by holding our open meeting at the start of every meeting. I saw an interesting article in Newsday, the Long Island newspaper today, that over 2/3 of local government municipal bodies do not give their residents the opportunity to participate in these Zoom meetings that are being held. We do. That's something we've always taken seriously. And when we get to the open forum in just a few minutes, you'll have the opportunity to call in at 303-3060. That's 303-3060. Bridget will take your call and pass along your questions or comments to me. When we get to the 3 public hearings we have on our agenda tonight, you will also have the opportunity to participate in those public hearings the same way by calling that same number, 303-3060. We'll talk a little bit more about those public hearings when they come up. We also continue to make our meetings accessible to the deaf and hard of hearing community with our ASL sign language interpreters. Tonight, our interpreters are Heather Barzinski and Melissa Lanty, and we thank you both. As we do at every town board meeting, our goal is to do the people's business, your business, right here out in front of you all. So let's start. I will start with the pledge. If you've ever tried to do this with everybody saying along, it gets very garbled, so I will read the pledge myself. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Let me just, as I have been doing at each of these meetings, let me just give an update on some things related to certainly COVID, but how we are, what we're doing here in town government. And what I can tell you is, as you've been hearing, no doubt, we are now beginning to plan for the reopening of certain activities in the Rochester-Finger Lakes region. If you've heard the governor's press conference, you've heard that our region is one of only a few in the state that is ready, based on a number of metrics, to begin the first phase of reopening after the onset of the coronavirus. I can also tell you that we here at the town of Brighton have spent a great deal of time discussing how and when we will open town hall to the public. I can tell you at this point that will not happen before June 1st. When it does happen, you're going to notice some things that are different. It will be by appointment only. We will conduct temperature checks of all persons entering the building, employees and visitors. All visitors will be required to wear masks in town hall. And of course, that's not only to protect other visitors, protect our own town employees. Social distancing will be a must. We have already installed panels, plexiglass panels in a number of our forward-facing, public-facing town hall offices. That's going to be a new look, but that will help keep you and our staff safe. We will be observing additional cleaning protocols, of course. All of these are among the procedures that the governor has outlined as important parts of reopening plans for businesses, but we think it's also important for government as well. Obviously, I say not before June 1st. Any decisions like that continue to be subject to decisions and guidance of the state of New York. Now, as I've noted in each of these little discussions, the town continues to operate and provide important services to the community. In a minute, you're going to hear our police chief, Dave Cathaldi, summarize the 2019 annual report of the Brighton Police Department. We formally received that report at our last meeting. And of course, the department continues to work, not only protecting the community in the traditional sense, but also by ensuring that activities like the mask distribution events that were held today and this past Saturday can be held successfully and safely. I'm just overwhelmed, frankly, to be able to tell you that during the course of these two events, the town of Brighton distributed approximately 150,000 masks. Those are masks that were provided by the County of Monroe, County Executive Adam Bello. And as you know, events have been held in all of the towns in Monroe County, in some of our villages. The city of Rochester is mailing masks to folks. We have provided some of the masks that we received to the Brighton Central School District, which provided them to people who are receiving free and reduced cost meals from the school district. And maybe most importantly, during the course of the day, Saturday and today, over 2 tons, and I'm not speaking in hyperbole, over 4,000 pounds of food, non-perishable food, was donated to the Brighton Food Cupboard. That is extraordinary, and I want to just thank the members of the Brighton community who made that happen. I really also have to thank the Brighton Police Department. They set a very, very smooth traffic flow. They set the whole thing up. Happen. So thank you to everybody. Gary, our facilities director, when it became clear today, we had ordered 70,000 for today. Maybe naively, I thought that after doing it once on Saturday, maybe the crowd wouldn't be quite as busy today. Well, there were people coming in to the driveway when I walked over to town hall this morning before 8 o'clock. And at 9:30, when I came out to start working, the line was already into Elmwood Avenue. By 11 o'clock, it was clear that, as they said in Jaws, we're going to need a bigger boat. So Gary went out, got more masks, went over to Chi-Li, and today we distributed just in one day over 100,000 masks. So it's really pretty extraordinary. And I don't know whether there will be any future mask distributions, but obviously there are. We'll let you know. Want to talk a little bit about the hardworking men and women of our highway department, as I have at each meeting. Our highway department is now working at full staffing levels, but with some very different protocols. One person per vehicle, and sometimes that means people are driving tractors, our Kubotas, when they might otherwise be more than one person in a vehicle. But everybody is working every day. We have strict cleaning protocols in place. Right now, our crews are working both on bulk and containerized lawn and garden debris pickup. If we haven't gotten to your street yet for bulk pickup, we will. We're close to finishing our second pass through town on the containerized pickup. And as always, you can go to the town's webpage, click on the link to our um, lawn and garden debris pickup, and see the maps where you will see where our crews are going to be working over the next couple of days. Now, during the course of the season so far, our crews have done a lot of work repairing potholes, as they do every spring. Winter just was made for potholes. We've been, as I noted, picking up containerized debris. We've worked with our tree contractor to remediate dangerous tree conditions like hanging broken branches in our trees along our town streets. Later this month, our highway department will begin the process of chip sealing. We're going to be chip sealing about 30 streets, all or part of 30 streets this year, all while continuing other highway activities. The process of chip sealing, I know it, we often get a few complaints because of the stones. Within 2-3 weeks, everything has been rolled between our roller, our sweeper, and just the action of our drivers driving over those streets. So the streets become, very solid. That gives us about 10 years worth of life on each of those streets at a cost that is a tiny fraction of the cost of doing a full repaving. Our target is every 30 years, we repave streets, and on 10-year cycles, we do the chip sealing in between. If you want to know whether your street is being chip sealed this year, that list is up on our webpage now. And I would also note that as we've done in the last several summers, our crews are working, instead of 5 8-hour days, they're working 4 10-hour days. Those 10-hour days are more efficient because our crews don't spend as much time, as they would say in construction, mobilizing and demobilizing, driving out to their job sites. They're working, they drive out and then work the 10-hour day before they drive back. So a lot of efficiency. I want to thank the men and women of the highway department, and I will tell you that I receive many compliments on your work on a regular basis. Now, at each of these Zoom meetings, we know how difficult this coronavirus has been on people. Many of us know people that we've lost, friends that have been lost to COVID, or at least people who have gone through, have been ill with COVID. But I want to let people know that even in these challenging, dark days, I want to point out what Don Elhart sometimes calls the bright spots, or maybe what I'll call the Brighton spots. People that go above and beyond to make things a little brighter during these difficult times. Tonight, I want to talk about a conversation I had with the other evening with a resident of St. John's Meadows here in Brighton, Jane Kitchenman. Now, Jane and her husband Vassar, but nobody calls him Vassar, people call him Kitch. They moved to St. John's Meadows from Irondequoit. Now, those of us that have moved know that it can be tough moving to a new town, and especially when you move out of your home into a senior living community. Put COVID-19 on top of that, and you might think that Jane and Kit should be singing the blues. Let me tell you, nothing could be farther from the truth. I will tell you very honestly that Jane, when I talked to her the other night, I was alternating between laughter and tears, honest tears, as she sang the praises of her new home in St. John's Meadows, and particularly as she sang the praises of the staff at St. John's Meadows, particularly the people working in food service there. The dining room is closed. So they don't have the joy of getting together with the other residents and talking to them and being served by those food service folks. But Jane tells me that the staff miss serving the residents as much as the residents miss being served in the dining room. So much so that in addition to serving them their meals, and of course they're delivering meals to the residents now, but some of the food service employees are stopping by just to check in on the residents, to say hello. They miss the residents miss them. As Jane said, their hands are connected to their hearts. And she's grateful to people there like Michaela. Now, Michaela is working there. She tells me to save money. She wants to go back down south, go to culinary school with dreams of opening her own restaurant. And it sounds to me as though Michaela and some of the other staff have already mastered the art of making her customers happy. So tonight I want to thank Jane for calling. And just as importantly, I want to thank the staff at St. John's Meadows. You're bringing light. You're making the lives of those hundreds of residents at St. John's Meadows a little brighter, a lot brighter. For Jane, for Ketch, and for all of those folks. I want to thank you. I look forward to being able to thank you maybe in a more visible way before too long. And in the meantime, I want to get on with our meeting tonight. Now, we're going to be going to the open forum in just a moment, but we do have a couple items of presentation and recognition. May 6th was National Nurses Day. Last week was National Nurses Week. So on behalf of the entire town board, I signed and issued a proclamation honoring National Nurses Day. And I'm just going to read a part of that. Whereas the World Health Organization declared 2020 as the International Year of the Nurse and Midwife to mark the critical contribution both professions make to global health. Whereas as the world fights a global pandemic caused by coronavirus, COVID-19, the important role of nurses has been underscored and celebrated. And whereas our reliance upon nurses for quality care has become abundantly clear in this time of crisis, and the sacrifices they've made by working long hours, sometimes with a shortage of personal protective equipment, has demonstrated their consummate professionalism and brave commitment to others. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that I, William W. Maley, Brighton Town Supervisor, on behalf of myself and the members of the Brighton Town Board, do hereby declare May 6, 2020 is National Nurses Day in the town of Brighton, and ask our residents to thank their local nurses and protect them and others by remaining vigilant against the spread of COVID-19 and continuing to wash hands for at least 20 seconds, maintain a social distance of at least 6 feet, and always wear a mask in public. And this proclamation is signed the 6th day of May 2020 by myself, William Maley, Brighton Town Supervisor, as I said, on behalf of my colleagues as well. Here is that proclamation. And while that date was a week ago and National Nurses Week was last week, it is never too late, particularly in these times, to thank the nurses that you know for the work that they do. This is also a week to honor another group of people that are so extraordinarily important in our lives. This is National Police Week. And I have likewise issued a proclamation on behalf of the entire town board honoring this week as National Police Week 2020, and I will read that proclamation. Whereas since 1962, National Police Week has been celebrated to recognize and honor police officers and pay special tribute to those who lost their lives in the line of duty. Whereas throughout our nation's history and throughout Brighton's history, law enforcement officers have never wavered in the face of crisis or tragedy. Whereas the important work of our police is particularly evident during this current public health crisis, as they stand resolute in their duty to serve during a time of worldwide uncertainty. Whereas stellar public servants, police are ever in the vanguard, knowing that they may find themselves in peril at any moment, some suffering debilitating injuries and others losing their lives, like the 307 fallen heroes being memorialized today on the walls of the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial. And whereas we are proud of our Brighton police officers for serving this community with respect, dedication, and distinction, especially during this historic time fighting the coronavirus pandemic, when helping our society pull together to protect our mutual public health is critical to our lives. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that I, William W. Maley, Brighton Town Supervisor, and on behalf of the members of the Brighton Town Board, do hereby proclaim and recognize May 10th through May 16th, 2020, as National Police Week in the town of Brighton. And we sincerely thank our police officers for all the sacrifices they make to keep us safe. This proclamation has been signed this 13th day of May 2020 by myself, William Maley, Brighton Town Supervisor, on behalf of my colleagues on the town board. And again, I will display that proclamation and thank Chief David Cathaldi and all of the members of the Brighton Police Department. Every day, rain or shine, they're out there making it happen, keeping us safe. Thank you. And that's a good segue, because next on our agenda, and we will be getting to that open forum in just a minute, but I wanted to offer Chief Cathaldi the opportunity. We received the 2019 annual report of the Brighton Police Department last week, but I think it's important for the public to hear a little bit more about the numbers and about how the Brighton Police Department works, what their philosophy is, their summary of 2019, and a little insight as to where we're at in 2020. So with that, I will turn the microphone over to Brighton Police Chief Dave Cathaldi. Chief.
Mr. Supervisor, member of the town board, thank you for the proclamation. You did forget to mention snow, as it did snow last Saturday,
yes,
as we can all attest to.
Pretty hard.
Yeah. So let me share this screen and I will put a PowerPoint presentation up there. For those watching at home, you can find a copy of the annual report online at townofbrighton.org. If you go under the police department icon, the town of Brighton police Facebook page, you will see a link to the annual or the annual report. This is our organizational chart. It's remained consistent with 40 sworn officers. 2019 last year was our first full year with our part-time police officers who provide security to our courts and, if needed, the town hall complex. Also, you'll see on the lower left side, we have 3 lieutenants. There's 1 lieutenant assigned to each shift. Last year in 2019 was our first full year with 3 lieutenants positions. And that was designed to provide clear lines of authority and responsibility to each respective platoon. This slide here represents the calls for service for the past 5 years. As you can see, there was a 15% increase in 2019 with a total of 57,890 calls for service. That's approximately 7,500 calls more than last year. And it's been steadily increasing for the past 3 years. The next slide, we further break down these calls into both self-initiated and response calls. The self-initiated calls is about a 27% increase from the previous year, with 29,530 calls. A self-initiated call are calls like a traffic stop, where an officer will go out there and self-initiate contact with the public. It could be a special attention to critical infrastructure within town, or target or areas that could be likely targeted for crimes, say churches or synagogues or stores. This also includes traffic special attentions. As you know, in attending a public safety meeting, that one of the main areas of focus is traffic enforcement within the town. So we direct officers to go out and pay particular attention in a certain neighborhood, and they will code that, quantify that with a special attention. And also, this is when an officer gets out of the car and may engage with the community. The response calls for service are just that. You see there's been a 5% increase. Those are the crimes in progress, delayed reports, motor vehicle accidents, and alarms. A few years back, we went to full compliance to NIBRS, which is a national incident-based reporting system. We are in full compliance with that, and across the nation, this will be the last year of the Uniform Crime Reporting System. All agencies across the country have to be NIBRS compliant. And what NIBRS in actuality is, it's just a metric, a reporting metric that better and more specifically gathers data on incidents of crime. With the Uniform Crime Reporting System, what would happen is if there was an incident, say, where there was a burglary and a larceny, it would only capture the highest offense, which would be burglary. Under the NIBRS system, it will capture both offenses, such as a burglary and a larceny. It also does better in tracking the demographic data on victims, specific crime locations, and offender data. And as you can see, there was an 8% increase in overall crimes from last year, which equates to about 125 more crimes. A particular note, you can see that there was a 34% increase in burglary. And I'll discuss that briefly on the next slide as well. It's obviously not trending in the right direction, but keep in mind, it takes one offender, one suspect can commit several burglaries throughout a time frame, and that can relate to the increase that we're seeing. Also, the 5% increase in larceny incidents, those are such things as thefts from motor vehicles, which is why we are continually putting out on social media, any type of media platform that we can get. We encourage residents to not leave valuable items in their cars and to certainly lock their vehicles. One person can literally commit dozens of larcenies in one night. This category, burglary, just gives you a better snapshot. As I said, burglaries were trending up in 2019, but if you can look back to the year 2009 to 2012, you can see that we were experiencing anywhere between 150 and 173 burglaries each year. So last year was historic lows with 66. And again, I would agree we're not trending in the right direction, but that's a number that we will certainly keep an eye on. Larcenies as well, you can see we're at historic lows. We're hovering right around the 600 plus or minus. We did have a 5% increase last year. You know, I don't want to say that I'm content with 600 larcenies in town, but we will continue to push out via social media platforms and any media platform that we can get to remind people, lock their cars, don't leave valuables in their cars. And I would like to see a decrease in that for the year 2020. Arrests, again, this is 11-year trending data. Our arrests are up about 10% over last year. It's really hard to say. I mean, arrests would count also for like DWI arrests. And as I'll talk about later, our DWI arrests were up. So that would account for an uptick in arrests. The next slide's further going to break down the arrest differences between males and females. As you can see, we had 390 males that we took into custody last year and 174 females. The arrest relationship between males and females has stayed about the same in the trending data, as you can see. Traffic concerns, they still continue to be a common area of concern for residents throughout the town. As you know, my first 6 months as the chief of police, we experienced 3 pedestrian fatalities here in town. A tragic crash on Edgewood Avenue and one other crash Chalet Circle back in January. And as you know, we have adopted a data-driven approach in trying to solve traffic issues. One of our first approaches is to look at the concern from the not only the crash data, but the traffic volumes and the number of violations in an area. Then we use the best approach to deal with that problem, whether that's putting up an LED sign that gives direct feedback to motorists, our smart unit, or we heavily rely sometimes on selective traffic enforcement. In 2019, you can see that we issued over 5,000 tickets. It's about a 16% increase, or equates to about over 700 tickets more from last year, where we only issued 4,552 tickets. My predecessor, Chief Henderson, towards the end of his tenure, was able to institute a traffic enforcement car, which I do feel was beneficial to issuing more traffic tickets, which drives down the motor vehicle crashes. This office, the officer's not handling calls for service, 911 calls, and getting redirected throughout the community. Their whole 8-hour day is solely to enforce vehicle and traffic laws. We did receive about a $10,000 grant funding through New York State to help us enhance seatbelt enforcement, and selected weeks throughout the year to fund additional patrols. In 2020, it'll probably be a struggle with cuts in funding from not only the state and federal levels. If hopefully we'll be able to keep a traffic enforcement car to continue with those efforts. DWI arrests, you can see that we made 30 more DWI arrests in 2019, which accounts for about a 16% increase. We refocused our efforts in 2019 with a dedicated DWI car. And this member who staffs that car has a higher level of training to not only recognize impaired drivers, but to better identify and gather evidence, which leads to successful convictions of drunk drivers. Next slide. This is just another slide showing the same thing in a bar graph. Our Stop DWI efforts are funded, partially funded through fine monies collected that is returned to the county. Then the county funds our efforts to send out additional patrols throughout the year. We are looking at a funding cut probably this year to those funds from Monroe County in the years ahead. Motor vehicle crashes. This shows 11-year trending data. We reached a high back in 2010 of about 1,600 motor vehicle crashes throughout the year, and we've been hovering right now right around the 1,200 mark. And I think one of the several root causes to that, the rededicated efforts of our traffic enforcement car and our DWI car that solely enforce vehicle and traffic laws, and more of a data-driven approach to those targeted areas. Domestic violence incidents, they continue to remain steady for the past 5 years. Domestic violence is any incident within a family setting, coercive behavior between members of the same family, to include intimate dating partners. We do have a very strong partnership with Willow Domestic Violence Center. And as you can see, that number is on that slide. It is a 24/7 number, and it's 222-SAFE. So we have had a strong partnership with them. They've actually come to our department and do training. Currently, they're plug for Willow. They are collecting items here at the police department. You can go on the Town of Brighton page, scroll down to the police department side, and you'll see some of those items that they're collecting throughout this pandemic. Domestic violence calls, I looked back and compared April and May of 2019 to 2020, and there has been an increase in domestic violence calls in the town of Brighton. So what we're doing proactively is we are contacting those victims of domestic violence to make sure that they haven't fallen through the cracks and they're receiving not only the service that they deserve from the Brighton Police Department, but we're making sure that they're directed to the right position, to the right process in court and or Willow Domestic Violence Shelter. Our body-worn camera program, it was started back in 2016. It was fully implemented in April of 2017. As you can see those numbers, I'm not an IT guy, but those are a lot of video footage. We've captured just in 2019 over almost 21,000 individual video files and over 3,000 hours of video. The camera footage that we do capture is proven to be extremely useful in the collection of evidence, the memorialization of police officers and citizen interactions. It goes a very long way when you can have a citizen actually come in here to the police department, and I've had them come in here before and sit here at the table, and you can play the video back for them, and you can explain not only the perspective of the officer, but you can listen to what the perspective of the citizen is. And more times than not, it can be resolved just in viewing of the video. A couple unintended consequences of body-worn cameras in early 2020 with the criminal justice reforms, the district attorney has been inundated. As you can see, those are very large numbers of files. And in one incident, you could literally have upwards of 3 officers recording contact with a citizen, and all of those video files have to be turned over to the district attorney for discovery. And all of those hours of video not only are reviewed by the district attorney handling a case, but a public defender themselves. So that's one of the unintended consequences of it. It's just very time consuming. But I will say it has been a turnkey system with Axon and their body-worn camera program. I was the initial administrator of it, and it's been a very beneficial program. 2020 goals and objectives. When I first started putting the slide together, I had a lot of lofty goals for 2020, and then came along COVID-19. So I think I really feel like we're trying to tread water at this point. I do want to get out there, continue to engage with the community. Everything that we're inherently do as police officers is engaging with the communities has been restricted. We can't gather, we can't do presentations, we can't do the Citizen Police Academy, our open house. All of those things have been postponed until we get some more guidance from the state. But I do look forward to the pandemic lifting and getting back out there and interacting with the community. Again, I'm open. My email address is here on the screen. It is also on the website. You can contact me anytime at the 784-5101 number. I like hearing from the community. And I'll say one more thing about the mass distribution today. I was watching Channel 13 News, and a 50-year resident of the town of Brighton was interviewed, and he summed it up really well. He said that we get it right in the town of Brighton. And I couldn't have been more proud when he said that. I'm very proud that you selected me as the chief of police, and I look forward to many more years of service as your chief of police. Oh, there we are. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. That's a great presentation. You made this presentation as well at the Brighton Rotary Club. I know it was very, very well received there. So thank you for getting it out to the community. I'm only a 40-year resident of Brighton, so that it was not me, but it's nice to hear that, one of the folks who came to the line, and it was quite a line, but that they felt that good about it. So as I said before, the police department was a big part of how that came off so well. So thank you. We'll now go to the open forum portion of the meeting. And as we've said, that is the portion of the meeting where we welcome anyone, any of our residents can call in to ask a question or talk about any item, whether or not it is on our agenda this evening. Now, I will say we have 3 public hearings on our agenda this evening. One is relating to parking on streets and in the Corbett's Glen parking lot, streets near Corbett's Glen Nature Park. That's the first public hearing. The second public hearing is to consider a temporary local law that will prohibit garage sales during the COVID-19 pandemic. I should have mentioned, by the way, that first public hearing on parking is also temporary during the COVID-19 emergency. And then finally, the third, which would allow people to park campers or recreational vehicles in their driveway as a means of quarantining themselves, but still staying close to home. Each of those was the subject of previous emergency orders that I issued under the state of emergency that the town of Brighton and the state of New York are currently under. And what we wanted to do through these local laws is extend them. In each case, they will extend till the end of 2020, or if the state of emergency in the town of Brighton ends sooner, they would end at that time. But if you're interested in speaking to any of those three public hearings, I would encourage you to wait until those public hearings are open. We have gotten one call, and I welcome now anyone to call in during that open forum. We have received one call during the open forum, and that is from a resident. It's from Marjorie Alamo at 90 Towpath Lane. And it's a question I heard a couple times today during the mask event. She asks, how and where can homebound seniors get a mask? I don't know that we can, I know we have some masks left from today's activities. Marge will make sure you get a packet of those masks. We do want our residents to be safe. Thank you for asking. If we do get any additional questions or comments during the open forum, I'll try to go back to them. But that is the only comment we have received thus far during the open forum. So I am going to continue on, and I'm going to ask for a motion, Chris, to approve the agenda. But before you do, I'm going to ask that you add communication, 2 items of communication. I'll be mentioning them more, but they are items of communication from Lorraine Van Kirk, and 4 items of communication, 2 dated May 12th and 2 dated May 9th from Tim Troush. And with those changes, can I have a motion to approve the agenda, Chris?
Bill, I move we approve the agenda with the addition of those communications.
And can I have a second, please?
Second.
And that was, I'm sorry, who was that seconding? Thank you,
That was
Jason.
me. Yep.
Beautiful. Any discussion? Hearing none. Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember DeFazio,
Aye.
Councilmember Werner,
Aye.
Councilmember Wiltz,
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado,
Aye.
Supervisor Maley.
Aye. Now we will go to the 3 public hearings tonight. The first public hearing is a public hearing for proposed temporary amendment to Chapter 185 of the Town Code to prohibit parking on certain streets near Corbett's Glen Nature Park and in the Corbett's Glen Nature Park parking lot due to the COVID-19 pandemic as amended. Dan, has the legal notice been given in this matter?
Yes, Supervisor, this was published in the April 23rd edition of the Brighton Pittsburgh Post.
Thank you. Legal notice having been given, I hereby declare that this public hearing is open and would offer the opportunity for members of the public to give their comments. I would again note that back in in early April, when we identified that Corbett's Glen Nature Park, different than many of our other parks, many of our parks like Buckland, Meridian Center, the Sandra Frankel Nature Park with the Brickyard Trail, those are all parks that are fairly wide open and in particular, in most cases, have very wide multimodal trails. Corbett's Glen is different. It's a beautiful park, but the trails are narrow. They are certainly not designed for social distancing. And if you get off the trail, particularly this time of year, you can wind up, unfortunately, being coming into contact with ticks, and we never want that to happen. So we've kept our parks open throughout the COVID crisis. We closed some of our playgrounds, but all of our parks have been open. But Corbett's Glen was a different situation. And we made the decision, and I issued a series of emergency orders restricting parking on these several streets, Avon, Astor, Kirk, Forest Hills, Glen Road, in order to limit the number of people that were going into a park that really has limited capacity at this time. So we are now going to hold a public hearing to consider whether to make that those emergency orders last a little bit longer. They would last either through the end of this year or through the end of the emergency condition. We have not received any comments from members of the public on this, although I will say that I did hear from a number of members of the public at the time we made the decision to initially put these parking restrictions in place by emergency order. So while I was talking, we did not hear from any members of the public, and hearing no more comments from the public, I declare this public hearing on the local law to be closed.
Supervisor, I need to make one quick correction. I was April 30th edition of the Post. My apologies,
right.
not the 20th. It said the 23rd. I was looking at the wrong notice. April 30th.
No problem. Thank you very much. But again, the public hearing is now closed. And can I have a motion to take action to approve this local law? Chris.
Bill, I move that we approve the local law restricting parking in accordance with the resolution before us.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember DePoncio,
Aye.
Councilmember Werner,
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt,
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado,
Aye.
Supervisor Maley.
Aye. Thank you. Our next public hearing is on a proposed local law temporarily amending Chapter 76 of the Town Code to prohibit garage sales in the town of Brighton. Garage sales are a defined term under that section of the law. And again, based on concerns that garage sales, they're a lot of fun. People enjoy them, but they're gathering places, neighborhood gathering places, sometimes community gathering places. People pick up, handle items, look at items, talk. It's not conducive to social distancing. And frankly, those items that are for sale can become vectors of the virus. So we made the decision through emergency order that I signed again in April and have renewed to this date, that we would prohibit garage sales. And this local law would continue that prohibition again to the end of this year. or until the end of the COVID emergency in the town of Brighton. Dan, has the necessary legal notice been given in this matter?
Yes, Supervisor. This one was also in the April 30th edition of the Brighton Pittsburgh Post.
Thank you. Notice having been given, then I declare this public hearing to be open. We have not yet received any phone calls, although again, I will say that I did get some feedback to the emergency law itself, generally positive to that. And once again, since we have no calls concerning, I'm just vamping for time a little bit in case somebody does want to call in and complain. And let me give that number again. It's 303-3060 is the number to call in during each of these public hearings, 303-3060. But hearing no calls, I declare this public hearing to be closed. And I will ask Councilmember Wilt if you would make the motion on this matter.
Certainly, Bill. On the matter regarding the proposed temporary amendment to Chapter 76 of the Town Code to prohibit garage sales due to the COVID-19 pandemic, I move that we adopt the resolution as prepared by the attorney to the town.
Thank you. And is there a second?
Second.
Councilmember Corrado, thank you. Any discussion by members of the town board? Hearing none, then I will ask the town clerk to please call the roll.
Councilmember DePonzio?
Aye.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt?
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado?
Aye.
Supervisor Mailey?
Aye. Thank you, everybody. Finally, our third public hearing tonight is on a local law that would, again, temporarily amend chapters 201 and 203 of the town code to remove certain restrictions on camping trailers and residential vehicles in residential districts due to the COVID-19 emergency. Again, as I mentioned earlier, this will allow people to quarantine in place at their home, but in a separate place of residence, effectively from the rest of their family. May stay in the house, and this person might be a healthcare worker or someone else can stay in that RV. And in fact, before I issued the emergency order, I became aware that there is a group, a national group called MDs for RVs, great name, that is giving out loans of recreational vehicles to healthcare professionals. And a resident of the town of Brighton, who is a nurse, received a loan of a recreational vehicle. She reached out, as well as another resident, to see if this is something we could do, and it made sense. It's temporary. We've had reasons for wanting to not have recreational vehicles parked in driveways, but again, these are special times. These are emergency times, so we're going to make this exception right now. And again, I will give the phone number 303-3060 if there is anyone that would like to call in during the public hearing. Dan, did I ask you the next? I don't believe I did. Has the legal notice been given in this matter?
Yes, Supervisor. This was also in the April 30th edition of the Brighton Pittsburgh Post.
Thank you. And the public hearing is open. 303-3060 for anyone that would like to comment on this proposed local law. No calls, says Bridget. So I declare this public hearing to be closed, and I will ask Councilmember Corrado if you would make the motion on this, please.
Certainly. On the matter of The proposed temporary amendment to chapters 201 and 203 of the Town Code, removing certain restrictions on camping trailers and recreational vehicles in residential districts due to the COVID-19 pandemic. I move that we adopt the resolution as prepared by the attorney to the town.
Second.
Second, that was Chris.
Yes.
Thank you. Any discussion on this proposed local law? Hearing none, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
Councilmember DeFazio,
Aye.
Councilmember Werner,
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt,
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado,
Aye.
Supervisor Mailey.
Aye. That concludes our public hearings for tonight. Next, our communications. Can I have a motion to receive and file our communications?
So moved.
Second, Councilmember Wilt.
Thank you both. Just to summarize our communications tonight, first is an email dated May 9th from Twig and Jim Hickam. They wrote expressing their appreciation of last Saturday's orderly, their word. It sometimes felt a little chaotic. Those cars were coming and coming, but I appreciate their that it felt orderly to them. That's, I know, again, I've talked about the role of the police department. The police department really kept it orderly. So thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Hickam. We also have, speaking of police, and speaking of someone who worked not only at Saturday's mask distribution event, but also at an event at Town Hall on Sunday, held by Nurses Serving Others, which was another food collection event for the Brighton Food Cupboard. But we have communication from the chief dated May 6th, as well as communication from police officer Lisa Hillier, that Officer Hillier is going to retire. And she has been a tremendous asset to the Brighton Police Department. She is one of those officers that is responsible for the great work that we've done in traffic enforcement. And we're going to really miss her. But again, just seeing her these last couple days working the food drive, interacting with the public, she's been a great officer, and we're going to miss her very much. Chief, anything you'd like to say about Officer Hillier?
I think you summed it up quite nicely, Mr. Supervisor. Lisa's been with us for nearly 20 years. Many years ago, she was a drug abuse resistance education officer in the schools. She received a couple excellent police service awards throughout her career. Up until recently, she was a field training officer, which a field training officer, someone who trains our newest recruits, and she helped to assist in training a couple of our newest recruits. So, and as you can see by her efforts last weekend, with 20 years on, she's still just as energetic as she was the day she started, and she will be missed.
Yes, she will. Thanks. Lisa, it's been great having you here. You know, oftentimes we try to have retiring police officers come in and we give them some kind of recognition. It's a little harder to do on Zoom, but I don't know if there's something we can do, if there's something she would even want us to do. But whether or not we're able to actually recognize her, I do want to personally, and on behalf of, I know, our entire town board, thank Officer Lisa Hillier for 20 great years working here in Brighton, and wish you the very best on the next steps in your life. We also have, as I mentioned, I'm adding a couple of additional items. The communication from Lorraine Van Kirk relates to the town has signed on as a party to an amicus brief in a matter pending before the United States Supreme Court. And it is the matter of the state of Texas versus the state of California. There are a number of other parties on both sides. This is the challenge to the Affordable Care Act, otherwise known as Obamacare. Brief in support of the Affordable Care Act. I need to move healthcare even further as a right of people. But what I think is absolutely clear to me in light of the COVID-19 situation and in light of the challenges that and sometimes people that we all know are going through, this is not the time. Shame on those people, starting at the very top, who would cut, who would eliminate healthcare, who would eliminate continuing to provide healthcare to children up to the age of 25. Cut that, they say. Cut mandated coverage for pre-existing conditions. No. Cut. At a time when unemployment has gone to 15%, surely on its way to 20 or maybe even 25%. Cutting the health exchanges, cutting access to health care for people who lose their jobs is insanity. Insanity. And to those states, their attorney generals, and to the President of the United States, who are advocating to eliminate Obamacare, eliminate the Affordable Care Act, you're wrong. And the town of Brighton stands with our attorney general and with the attorney generals of so many other states, particularly the state of California, in standing up and making the case in so many ways why the Affordable Care Act must be protected now more than ever. So we have that communication from Lorraine Van Kirk, but more importantly, we have the actual amicus brief itself, and I will be delivering that electronically to the town clerk. We also have 4 emails from Tim Troush. You'll recall that last time Mr. Troush had sent an email, and I talked about the economics of COVID-19 as it impacts municipalities like the town of Brighton. Mr. Troush sent 2 emails on May 9th. He also sent an email to myself and to my Guyon with a number of questions about debris pickup and other matters relating to the highway department, and Mike answered those questions in a reply back to him. There were also 2 emails on May 12th, yesterday. One, because he was very happy that our crews had come that day and picked up his containerized debris. But second, he didn't feel that I had fully answered some of his questions as thoroughly as I might have. And that may be true, but in large part, and I did talk at some length, probably too much length, about the impact on revenues of the various important revenue streams that are being impacted by COVID-19. But I think what Mr. Troush is looking for is more detailed information about furloughs and layoffs, and it really would not be appropriate for me to comment publicly on employment decisions as they relate to individual town employees. I can tell you that a number of town employees, part-time employees, have been furloughed. But Mr. Troush, I really can't get into any more detail than that. It would just not be appropriate for us to do that. So I would ask, we have a motion to receive and file all of those items of communication, including the 5 that I've added that are not on your agenda. And unless there are any discussion on any of those items, Dan, if you would please call the roll on the motion.
Councilmember DePonzio.
Aye.
Councilmember Werner.
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt.
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado.
Aye.
Supervisor Manley.
Aye. Thank you. Again, our town board committees have not been meeting during the coronavirus emergency, but our 4 town board members who chair our 4 committees, will give them each an opportunity to at least briefly address any matters that are relevant to the normal work of those committees. We'll start with you, Robin, the Community Services Committee.
Thank you, Bill. As you mentioned, the Community Services Committee has not met since the last town board meeting, but I do have some updates from our department heads. From our Recreation Department, and news in that department is relatively unchanged at this point. Our in-person programs are still suspended, and the Recreation Department is still operating remotely for the time being. We do have limited online programming available on the town website, and more will be added as programming is updated. We're hard at work trying to determine the safest path forward toward resuming programs when appropriate. And the rec department wants you to know that the importance of summer camp, especially given that our wee ones have been home for possible given the state of emergency. We'll keep the community posted on any updates in that regard. The Brighton Farmers Market will reopen with new COVID-19 procedures on Sunday, operating via pre-order and pre-sale only. That means that you can make your orders with vendors in advance. The first hour on market day from 9 to 10 a.m. will be reserved for seniors and vulnerable individuals only. And then in order to ensure that we're not experiencing crowded conditions and properly space out our attendance, we ask that other customers come during the hour that corresponds to their first letter of their last names. A through H will attend from 10 to 11 a.m. I through P from 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Q through Z will attend from 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. If at all possible, we're advising that only one individual per family attend, and we ask that dogs remain at home. So please see the Brighton Farmers Market website for full details. That website is www.brightonfarmersmarket.org. These new policies are subject to change and will be adjusted as warranted given the status of the COVID-19 crisis. Just as a reminder, we have canceled Brighton's semi-annual electronics recycling and secure document shredding event, which was scheduled to take place on Saturday, May 16th. In addition, Brighton's Memorial Day ceremony has been canceled for this year. Stay up to date with our recreation announcements on our website at www.townofbrighton.org/rec or on our Facebook page, www.facebook.com/Brighton Recreation. An update to our Parks Department, park trails remain open, but all athletic fields, basketball courts, playgrounds, pavilions, and lodges remain closed to the public. Please remember that our park trails, paths, and walkways may not always be 6 feet in width, and take care to observe the recommended distance of 6 feet or more from other patrons. All facility reservations will be canceled through June 30th. The state has made allowances, however, for low-risk recreational activities. So our Parks Department will be reinstalling the tennis nets and opening up our tennis courts. As you heard earlier this evening, Corbett's Glen still has parking restrictions, and some additional neighboring streets have been added to that executive order to help reduce Corbett's Glen traffic. We are working on a plan to get started the full-time park staff back on a regular basis. Overall, we're requesting that park users be mindful of social distancing practices and remain at least 6 feet away from other park patrons at all times. We also want to remind everyone that town code requires dogs to be on leash at all times in all town of Brighton parks. And I just did want to give a quick update on the census as well. Brighton's census response rate as of almost a week ago was just at 67.5%, and that puts us short of Penfield's response rate of 71.5% and Parrington's at 72.7%, and also Pittsburgh's at 76.9%. As you know, an accurate count is critical to ensuring that we are properly funded for emergencies responders, infrastructure, after-school programs, senior programs, educational programs, and more. So please do, since we're home now, take the time to fill out your census. It's about money, power, and data. So make sure that Brighton gets its fair share by responding to the 2020 census. Thank you so much for your help. And thank you for your patience and observance of the COVID-19 safety protocols. Stay safe and stay sheltered, folks. The next regularly scheduled meeting of the Community Services Committee would have been on Wednesday, May 20th at 9:30 a.m., but that meeting will not take place in person. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Robin. Finance and Administrative Services, Jason.
Yes, Bill, very briefly, the Finance Administrative Services Committee was canceled in accordance with protocol due to COVID-19. However, just by way of information, our Finance Director, Paula Parker, has been circulating the correspondence and supporting documentation underlying each of our agenda items on the upcoming town board meeting. And we have the opportunity, of course, on a one-on-one basis to comply with open meetings, to ask either Paula or the appropriate department head any questions we might have. So to the extent that we're able, we're trying to conduct our meetings remotely and in accordance with protocol. Our next regularly scheduled meeting, unfortunately, will also be canceled. We were supposed to meet on May 19th. And we just have to keep our eyes on things hopefully getting back to normal where we can meet in person in the future.
Thanks, Jason. You know, the Finance Department is one of those, I talk about public-facing departments. The Finance Department really isn't, for the most part, a public-facing department, although particularly some of our retirees do interface with the team. But you talk about keeping government open. Well, if we don't pay the bills and if we don't pay payroll, we're in a heap of trouble. And so Paula and Suzanne, our Finance Department team, have continued to work, whether they're working from home or whether they're coming in here. Really appreciate your unsung, but absolutely essential employees to our operation. Thank you, Paula. Thank you, Suzanne, Amy, Anna. We really appreciate your work. Next, public safety. Christine.
So public safety, continuing on that theme of no public meetings. We were to have met yesterday morning, but did not. However, I do have brief updates here. First of all, I would like to note that in addition to celebrating National Nurses Day and National Police Week, May 4th was International Firefighters Day. May 10th through 16th is National Skilled Nursing Care Week, and we know how difficult circumstances are in skilled nursing facilities during this pandemic. So please keep nurses in skilled nursing facilities in your extra special thoughts. May 10th through 16th is also National Hospital Week. Again, certainly an epicenter of activity, and we all have great respect for everyone on staff in hospitals. And coming up, May 17th through the 23rd is National EMS Week. So once all the hoopla over one wave of our first responders and healthcare workers is over, we turn the focus on another portion of our public safety community. But know that we appreciate all of those service providers, all of our public safety professionals year round. From all of the agencies, everyone does remind the general public to continue practicing careful physical distancing of at least 6 feet, 2 meters or 1 melee. Make sure that you are still wearing your masks when you are out and about. The mask is not for you necessarily, it's for everyone else around you. You can't know that you're a super spreader until you've been tested, and testing doesn't happen until you're not feeling well. So please protect those around you. It's a sign of respect. Brighton Fire Department, as of last month, had 596 calls year to date, with no calls of significance since their last meeting in March. And Chief Hiller noted that calls are down significantly off of previous years, in large part because people are staying put, staying home, staying safe. Similar report from the Rochester Fire Department, which serves West Brighton. The City of Rochester Fire Department in April responded to 46 alarms in West Brighton, for a total of 227 alarms so far in 2020. Engine 8 responded to 36 alarms in West Brighton in the month of April, and that would be a total of 191 alarms for 2020. Again, no alarms of any significance. People are being safer. And Rochester Fire Department continues to monitor the current COVID-19 response guidelines and responds as recommended. The Rochester, pardon me, I've got too many papers on my desk. Bear with me a moment. Here's what I get for killing too many trees. It makes reporting out a little less elegant. Well, forgive me, Chief, it was your report on the Brighton Police Department. You did give such an exceptional overview. I won't belabor reporting on the police department, except to add that operations are starting to return to normal standards as we are reopening in our region. Brighton Volunteer Ambulance reminds everyone that the loan closet is still closed, and BVA cannot take currently loaned equipment for return or accept donations of equipment while we are still under shutdown orders. BVA and all of the public safety agencies do point out that it is still safe to call 911 in an emergency. BVA in particular says wants residents to be very mindful of heart attack warning signs, which include chest discomfort, arm, back, neck, jaw, or stomach pain, shortness of breath, breaking out in a cold sweat, nausea or lightheadedness. They would also encourage people to be aware of stroke warning signs, including face drooping, arm weakness, and speech difficulty. If you or someone around you is experiencing any of those symptoms, don't hesitate to call 911. Time makes a difference. Our first responders will be there. I speak from personal experience. Right in our own household, we had a situation just yesterday. A family member was exhibiting signs of stroke and experienced a fall. Brighton Volunteer Ambulance was at our home within minutes of our call. They attended to the family member professionally, carefully. They arrived wearing masks. They checked very quickly first for any symptoms of COVID amongst anyone in the household, and they attended to the family member immediately, swiftly, and all is well. So from personal experience and straight from the professionals, we encourage everyone in the community, if you are in any way experiencing any emergency, please still call 911. You can always review the websites brightonambulance.org or brightonfd.org for additional information about COVID-19 safety and other first responder services. If all goes well and the community gets to open up, our next meeting of the Public Safety Committee will be Tuesday, June 9th at 8 a.m. in Town Hall. I have to admit, I don't mind getting not having to get up at the crack of dawn to meet with all of our first responder agencies, but I have missed seeing everyone, and I'm sure members of the community have missed the opportunity to engage in person as well. So members of the community are always welcome to attend, although certainly under some new protocols and procedures once we are able to return to Town Hall. And that is all.
Thank you, Christine. And Public Works, Chris.
Thanks, Bill. Public Works has not met in accordance with the pandemic restrictions. However, Commissioner Guyan has provided me some of the highlights of our Public Works Department this past month or so. The winter's farmers market interior barn improvement bids were received on May 4th, and there were two bidders within about $20,000 of each other at $419,000 and $439,000, and those bids are being reviewed for completeness. The Highway Department has issued an RFP to evaluate the highway garage underground storage tank sump penetrations, and those responses to the RFP are due May 28th, 2020. Also, the Highway and Sewer Department hours, the summer hours have gone into effect, with our crews now working 4 10-hour days starting on May the 4th, and that'll go till August 21, and they'll be working that from 6:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Also, additionally, the increase in lawn debris along our roadways and our road maintenance schedule make it essential that those departments are operating at full capacity. And both departments are at full capacity as of May 6th. Chip sealing will begin on May 18, and the letters have been sent to the affected residents, and a list of the roadways, as Bill has indicated, are on our website for those that will be chip sealed. Also, the CDBG application for the Crittenden Road sidewalks. With respect to those, we were contacted by Monroe County regarding an opportunity to submit an application for grant funding. We've prepared that application, including the installation of approximately 550 linear feet of sidewalk along the south side of Crittenden Road from the West Henrietta Crittenden Road intersections to the Brighton Village apartments. Also, as required by the New York State Department of Transportation, the project also includes pedestrian improvements to that intersection at an anticipated cost of about $235,000. As indicated, I know folks have been quite anxious that the yard debris start getting collected, and that has begun. Actually began last week on the streets that will receive chip sealing, and we're going starting in the ordinary manner on May 11th. So it's just begun, and those leaves will be cleared. So Mike, thanks for the update. Anything to add at all, sir?
No, I think that covers it, Chris. Just want to let people know that we will be working the 410, so they know when to expect our crews out and about.
Very good. Thank you, Mike.
And I'll just give a shout out that that grant application, the CDBG, is additional community development block grant funding that was provided for in one of the COVID relief bills. The amount of time that we were given, first to give notice that we were going to be submitting a grant and then to submit the actual grant, was literally a matter of days. Normally, the community development block grant schedule is an annual program. We know when it's coming. It's part of our programming. We literally had less than 48 hours to submit a notice that we were going to file a grant application. I think that was, we had to do it by noon on a Friday. And I think we found out about it maybe, I can't remember if it was Wednesday or Thursday. And then by Tuesday of that very next week, we had to have a grant application in. And Mike and his team, and again, you know, some of it working from home, were able to get an application put together. This is something we've wanted to do for some time. That's an important project. It met the criteria. So we don't know. We don't know what to expect, but just the mere fact that your team was able to put that application together is more evidence of how hard your town officials are working, even during this pandemic. So thanks for that. And I think Everett was involved on that too, Mike, and I'm not sure who else, but job well done and fingers crossed. All right, that completes our committee reports. We'll go to new business. Jason, reading and approval of claims.
Yes, Bill, earlier today, I reviewed claims totaling $352,056.82. Notable claims include to CDW-G Computer Center, the amount of $3,629.02 for the purchase of various computer and server equipment as approved in the 2020 through 22 CIP. Also to the Depository Trust Company, in the amount of $17,606.25, which was the interest-only payment on the 2018 Parkland Acquisition Bond. Also to the New York State Municipal Workers' Compensation Insurance in the amount of $30,041.63, which was the second quarter 2020 assessment and 2019 reconciliation. And finally, the Waste Management of New York for refuse pickup for town areas and for March through April 2020 refuse district, totaling $173,010.77. The claims all appear to be in order, and I move that they be approved.
Second.
Second?
Yes. Second.
Thank you, Chris. Any discussion on any of those? Hearing none, Dan, please call the roll on the motion.
Councilmember DePonzio.
Aye.
Councilmember Werner.
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt.
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado.
Aye.
Supervisor Maley.
Aye. Jason, why don't you do the next one as
Yes,
well?
the next matter is to approve a budget transfer in the amount of $2,200 from Highway Road Repair Road Materials account to the Highway Road Repair Sewer Construction Repair account to replace damaged storm sewers. I move that we adopt the resolution as prepared by the attorney to the town.
Second, Robin Wilt.
Mike, anything you want to say about this one?
Yeah, real quick. We're transferring the money so we can kind of catch up on our storm sewer work so we can get our paving done later in the year. That's the intent of this transfer.
You always want to do the sewer work first and then pave.
Yeah,
you don't want to pave it and then dig it up to fix the sewer. Good. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on that? Hearing none, Dan, please call the roll on the motion.
Councilmember DePonzio.
Aye.
Councilmember Werner.
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt.
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado.
Aye.
Supervisor Maley.
Aye. Chris, next one, please.
Next item is to authorize the supervisor to execute a renewal contract with Roman Construction Development Corporation for the 2020 sidewalk repair program in an amount not to exceed $169,200. I move that we adopt the resolution before us.
Second.
Every year, of course, we engage in paving sidewalks, both our district sidewalks to the extent that they need repairs, as well as the sidewalks along the arterial streets, which are paid for on a town-wide basis out of general funds. And this is the price for that work for this year. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember DePonzio.
Aye.
Councilmember Werner.
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt.
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado.
Aye.
Supervisor Mailing.
Aye. Robin, if you do the next one.
Certainly. Sorry, Bill. The next matter seeks to authorize the issuance of an RFP for a consultant for the Brighton Memorial Library roof replacement project. I move that we adopt the resolution as prepared by the attorney to the town.
Second, Chris Werner.
Any discussion on that? We'll see what the consultant has to say. Dan, if you would call the roll, please.
Councilmember DePonzio.
Aye.
Councilmember Werner.
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt.
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado.
Aye.
Supervisor Mailing.
Aye. Matters of the supervisor, you have in your packet the March 2020 expense and revenue reports. And I think we're just going to receive and file those tonight. Can I have a motion to receive and file that report?
So moved.
Second, Chris Werner.
Discussion? Hearing none. Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember DePonzio.
Aye.
Councilmember Werner.
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt.
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado.
Aye.
Supervisor Mailing.
Aye. And I don't have anything else to add. In terms of the supervisor report, I talked about a number of things earlier, so we're good to go. Matters of the attorney to the town. Ken?
Thank you, Bill. First, my apologies to everyone for being so late to tonight's meeting. I do want to just briefly report on CCA and our continuing work to get in place a program to let us go forward with the community choice aggregation for electricity for all of the town residents. We're now in the process of refining what will be the electric supply agreement, which is an agreement that would be entered into by the electric supply company, providing that renewable energy to the town and, of course, to our partners in this program, the towns of Pittsford and Arundecoit and the village of Pittsford. I believe that there's going to be a session this Friday for those who have been, if you will, the steering committee for the towns to get together with the principals of Jewel, our administrator for the CCA program, to go over a couple important elements and help explain a couple critical issues that they need the towns to decide on relative to the electric supply agreement. But we are making good progress and are hopeful that we'll be able to roll out this program to the community very soon.
Thanks, Ken. Matters of the town clerk.
I'll just briefly mention, County Executive Bello did extend the due date for the town and county tax cycle to May 31st. Part of that was holding the interest rate at 3%, so it's still the March interest is still applicable. That said, there was some confusion over the weekend and into Monday. Every year, the county treasury is required to send out a notice letting anyone with any outstanding amount due know that they still have something they need to take care of. And unfortunately, that went out. Normal times, not a big deal, but overlapping COVID and the extended due date caused a great deal of confusion. So if anybody's listening that, I think I talked to most of the town on Monday, but if you were one of the handful of people that didn't call and ask me a question on Monday, don't have to worry about that necessarily. If you don't see your check, you've sent your final payment and it hasn't cleared yet, don't be concerned yet. If you don't see that clear by the end of next week, give me a call. Since I'm the only person on my team working in the office, as you can imagine, the volume around these, the due dates, at least as they were on paper, jumps up tremendously. So it just takes time to stay on top of those as a one-man team. But everything will be cleared by the end of next week. Just that's before then, but I just want to give a little room for wiggle room there. The other part of the confusion with that is the amount on that notice is the same as the third installment. Again, with the interest rate being held over from March to April, a lot of people looked at that and then they looked at their check register and said, that check already cleared. I already paid that. Why am I getting a notice? So it's actually wasn't referencing your third payment. It was referencing the fourth payment that, frankly, by that point, they had already sent in. We just haven't processed yet. So any questions, please don't hesitate to call, and I'll be happy to clear anything up. The other thing I will mention is, unfortunately, again, we all very aware of the health piece of this pandemic, but the economic piece is very real for a lot of people. And if I've unfortunately talked to a number of of our neighbors in the last couple of weeks who are trying to figure out how they're paying all their bills because they've been furloughed from their job. Again, please don't hesitate to reach out and give me a call. Happy to walk you through, what systems are in place and what it actually means. Not paying it by May 31st does not mean somebody's coming and taking your house. They're not putting a notice in the paper or anything like that. So, but reach out and we can look at your specific property and kind of walk through where you might be at.
Thanks very much, Dan. I know you fielded a ton of calls there, and I think it's always helpful when our residents hear the voice of someone that can answer their questions. So thank you for doing that. And yes, spending the better part of the day Monday doing exactly that. Thanks. Matters of the board.
Bill, I wanted to share something to build on what Christine had previously said about maintaining social distance and health matters and such. I read an interesting study this morning out of universities in Belgium and in the Netherlands, talking about proper distance around folks that are running. I know I've seen an awful lot of runners, and by all means, if you can't do anything else, you might as well keep in shape. But appropriate distances there increase greatly as given the slipstream that a runner creates. And they suggest 5 meters is more appropriate as opposed to 1.5 meters. So if you are running, be wary of that. And if you see runners out and about, you need to stay some 15 to 20 feet behind them because the chance of infection does increase with running speeds.
Thanks, Chris. That's an interesting study that's gotten a lot of play, some folks agree with it, some folks don't entirely. It makes sense. And it makes sense to be cognizant of where people are. As someone who walks a lot and therefore gets passed a lot by runners, I really do see people, runners and walkers, being very careful and maintaining distance, not cutting right back in front of folks. So it's a great reminder. It's really a three-step process. Stay home. If you don't have to go out, stay home. But obviously the weather's getting nice. We all need to get out of the house, if for no other reason than for mental health, but physical health is also good. So when you do go out of the house, we know you're going to, and that's a good thing. Please maintain that social distance, at least 6 feet, and please wear a mask. Please wear a mask. And as someone said earlier, it's not to protect yourself, it's to show respect. I think, Christine, you had mentioned it. That mask is protecting other people from you. That's why we're wearing masks. That's why we passed out 150,000 masks. Not to protect ourselves, but to protect the people around us. The people around us who may be seniors, who may be immunodeficient in some way, shape, or form, who may be children that we're learning that this Kawasaki syndrome that is connected with COVID that seems to be affecting children. Unfortunately, we are now finding that it does not give children a free pass. Please wear a mask. Please make sure your kids wear a mask when they go out. Let's keep our numbers where they need to be. Let's keep us moving down the road towards a safe reopening, not for reopening for reopening's sake, not a reopening that's going to rekindle this infection, but a reopening that's going to continue the successes that we've had so far, a reopening that will allow us to gradually, on a phased-in basis, resume economic activity without breaking the bank and reigniting infections in a way that will only make matters worse. And doing those things, staying home when you can, maintaining a social distance, and wearing a mask when you leave the house, those are key. Those will help immeasurably. Any other matters of the board? Hearing none, I am going to ask for a motion to go into executive session to discuss the appointment of a particular person in the highway department.
So moved.
Second.
I think Robin won that one. Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember DePonzio,
Aye.
Councilmember Werner,
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt,
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado,
Aye.
Supervisor Maley.
Aye. Thank you. I'm going to ask that Ken and Dan and Mike Guyon join the board in that executive session. I do not anticipate that the board will come back out of executive session. So everybody else that is currently on the Zoom meeting, once we leave to go into the executive session, everybody that we need in the executive session should stay on this Zoom call. And I do want to thank both our stenographer, Rhoda, but also our ASL interpreters, Heather and Melissa. Thank you. And I want to thank Steve Del Monte, who has been doing the feed out to the rest of the world tonight. But Steve, in a moment, I will ask you to shut down the live stream and shut down the broadcast on cable 1303 so we can go into executive session. Stay safe, everybody. Again, please, please stay safe. And we will see you for our next town meeting, which will again be held on Zoom and broadcast out to the community on Wednesday, May 27th at 7 p.m. Have a good evening, everybody. Again, stay safe. Thank you.
We just need to make sure that